This is unfortunately one of the later videos that I ended up making. I went to a therapy session that really kind of did a number on me. And I mean, it's a good thing, right? Going to therapy is a good thing. But I'm one of those people that after I end up going to one, I'm pretty worthless for the next 12 hours. I don't think I'm alone in this, but normally when I'll go, I end up reprocessing, overthinking things. In fact, I know a lot of other people do that sort of stuff. I can't just walk in and feel like, oh, done with that, problem solved. I know it's not like that. But I end up thinking about a lot of stuff really in depth. And sometimes I'll go walking around and doing different things. I ended up finding, I think it's a little scratched up, but it's Howl's Moving Castle. And it's the steel case edition. I think it's got a few scuffs on it, but this is one I didn't own on any sort of physical media. And now recently I've really been in a hurry to like rebuild add to my physical media collection. I really like steel cases because, they're very nice looking, and, from an artistic standpoint, I just love the look of them. They just seem really cool. And thankfully, it looks like the majority of the scuffs were just on the plastic overlay. This thing looks really good. And, I'm the kind of sucker that keeps like the little card back and everything. This is really cool. Oh wow, it's beautiful inside. One disc is slightly dislodged, but that's okay. It just came off. It doesn't look like it's any worse for the wear. Yeah, so there's the internal if you haven't seen this before. I have a few in my collection and I really, really enjoy them. I don't know that I've gone off on the whole aspect of physical media. That could be a whole nother thing that for me is really something that I'm like, there should be more physical media. And the reason I go on about that is because I've got to figure out some way to put this in here. It doesn't totally fit in this case correctly. Maybe not. See if you gonna close? Probably not with that on down. Yeah, I was trying to clip this piece of paper to close in there, but I'll figure that out later. I know it sounds really goofy, but with anything like this, it's more than just that. It's looking at the simplicity of the design, how the characters are isolated on there. And I look for things like this also because, I don't know. Oh, there's a little bit of denting down on the bottom, but that's not bad at all. So that's bought from a recovery sales outlet called Cargo Largo here in Kansas City. That they're actually building a brand new, huge store near the same location they're in right now. And one of the things that happens is that they'll often get new product that's been slightly damaged or overstock that hasn't sold. There's a lot of Amazon warehouse or resale outlets like that coming up around. This one is specifically multi-tiered for different areas. You get Target, Walmart, a ton of overflow stuff. And you'll find things at ridiculous prices. Sometimes they're a little higher, which is a little weird because they're starting to get savvy to what they have on hand. And if they have a staff member that knows electronics or movies or games or something, they know what they have. But then there are other people that just, that are working, that they're given a price area and they work in that, and then it's a free-for-all. And I see a lot of flippers and other people go in there and buy stuff to resell on eBay. Kind of a weird time. Nonetheless, that was a very happy purchase, and so I'll be adding that to the rest of my little steelbook collection that's growing. My first steelbook was Hellboy. That one I was elated when I found it, and I got that one for $2. This one was what, 10? Yeah, it was $10. So abruptly, as I was talking about that steelbook, I noticed that my phone ran out of storage. I have quite a bit of storage on my phone, but ever since I started doing these journals, I've been forgetting to delete the original files that I'll make the master videos from. The archivist in me is like, oh, you should always keep those for some reason, but I literally have, it's almost embarrassing to say, I think 64 gigabytes minimum of old video files, just various formats, clips, things, projects in process that are on my hard drives, much more on some externals. And there's a lot of times when I think to myself, when am I ever going to get around to that whole aspect of that? File cleaning has been a whole other issue, and that's the kind of thing that can cause a lot of anxiety in a lot of people. Some people ignore it, and for me, I actually, when I was still working in Hallmark, I got turned on to this bit of software that is a file renamer. And it's super dorky here for just a second. But former coworker and buddy of mine, Brian Delks, he had introduced me to the one thing I did take from the job. He'd kill me for saying this, but was this app that ran on the Macs that basically you could select a bunch of files within a folder, and then you were able to go back in and either put a prefix, a suffix, or any characters anywhere within the name, rename entire batch file sets. So when I'm organizing either art reference, photos I've taken, things I need to upload, whatever, I'll create project folders. And those are named succinctly for whatever the project is. This is one of the few things I'm extremely OCD, anal retentive about. And then I'll go into the file formats, and it'll be something like, I always start with the year. That's the first thing I'll look at, because this is a deep dive into my own weird psychosis, but for so long I'm very obsessed with dates and times and things like that, just for my own personal stuff, which is why I'm doing this series. And so I always start everything with like the year. So it'd be like 2023 underscore 01 January underscore the date. Pretty normal shit, right? And then underneath that it'll be like, then there's subcategory folders within my drives where it'll be like art projects or the Artisan Rogue. So then underneath Artisan Rogue there's branding and all this other shit, or vlogging like this, and then underscore vlogging, and then source videos. And then I'll go into that and mess with the source videos and do that sort of stuff and rename each one of those things to kind of match the hierarchy of the file paths. That's a whole lot of dorky shit to say. That's one of the few things that I really have my shit together on that I try and work on. But even that I can fall behind. So every once in a while, it's not bad to go back in and clean files out and not have to worry about that shit. Nonetheless, yeah. So one thing, this is another thing I'm going to touch on really quickly, because and I go back and forth on a lot of what I'll discuss on here, because some of it is, well, I'm trying to keep what's on my mind out there, but I'm also trying to, unfortunately, and this is the people pleaser in me, I'm trying not to elicit too many circumstances where I'm going to say something inflammatory, but at the exact same time I have to realize just my own actions, even if they're fairly benign, piss somebody off in this world. That's just how it works. So what I was going to talk about was, there was a video, and I'll show you the clip right here, and it was showing a clip of Mr. Rogers. Now, for any of you that know, I am a massive Mr. Rogers fan, and the main reason is because when I was younger, he was a positive role model for me, and probably one of my earliest people that I looked up to. There was like other people, like the cast and crew on Sesame Street, a lot of them, and Captain Kangaroo, and even oh man, what was his name, Commander Mark of the Secret City. It was all of these creative and just generally interesting people that led interesting lives, even though fabricated for television. When you're a little kid, you're like, holy crap, it's amazing. And Mr. Rogers was definitely one that, over the course of my years, I would often ask myself, not just am I the kind of person that the kid version of me would be proud to know, but am I also the kind of person that these people I looked up to would be happy to know, especially Mr. Rogers. LeVar Burton from Reading Rainbow was another example of that. And anytime I ever felt like maybe I wasn't living up to what my potential was, or doing as good of a job, I would often question myself on that and hold myself up to those regards. It's how it got me through school. It's how it got me, high school, college, beyond. It helped me get through job interviews. I look to a lot of people for that inspiration. I've spoken before about how Steve Bloom was the voice actor. Steve Bloom does the voices of Wolverine, Spike Spiegel off of Cowboy Bebop. He was a huge influence to me. And when I had seen him on a show that's on YouTube called VO Buzz Weekly, which I believe is still going. If you're interested in voiceover, I highly recommend that show. Nonetheless, he was invited to come to NakaCon, and I had my chance to meet him. And I was working by myself at my booth. I couldn't really get away from it, but I saw him walk by. I took the chance, literally leapt over the little fabric cordon there that was right. I thought I could have broken my neck jumping over that thing. This doesn't jump very often. And so I went and I caught up with him and I told him everything. And I pulled out this little piece of paper, because in the interview, when they're asking him, what sort of advice do you have for new and upcoming people trying to get into voice acting? And the quote was, the audition is the job. And it hit me so hard. And every single session I ever did for voice acting, whether it's here in the studio or whether when I was still working for Hallmark and being one of their on-staff voice actors, I would pull that little piece of paper out and I'd lay it right next to the script. And as I'm reading through the copy, I'm remembering what he's saying. So I'm trying to give it 100%. And I didn't always succeed, but I always remembered what it was and what kept me driven in doing that sort of thing. And it's led to me being much more versatile and verbose and wanting to do projects like this, wanting to, do my crazy little experimental podcast that I did for a few years and other aspects like that. So it allowed me to become more comfortable, but it also gave me somebody to look up to. Now, the reason that I showed you that clip earlier about Mr. Rogers is you'll notice the comment that I left behind. There are a lot of people. Now, I'm not going to go into a deep dive discussion about that. There's just no time in the world to cover that. And it's a weird thing for me in that I very much am somebody that believes this. For the most part, if you are living your life and you're not infringing on anyone else, if you're not hurting anyone, if you're not doing anything that is just off the cuff, stupid or shitty or bad to somebody else, live your life. I would count myself as an ally of the LGBTQ plus. I'm being careful saying the letters. I don't mean that derisively. And I have many acquaintances and friends that are within that realm. I've helped do videography for drag shows. For either way, positive or negative, am very neutral about a lot of things. They're people. Growing up, I remember many instances, and shit, even when I worked bars and stuff, the whole concept on there was about Mr. Rogers talking about just two genders existing. Now, we know scientifically that other species and other circumstances show that there can significantly be more than one gender. I don't know enough to speak to that. That's just the things I've read, the things I've understood, and people I've talked to within some of the communities that have enlightened me on some of that. I know enough to stay in my own lane. I don't criticize anyone else that is outside of whatever I deem to be my norms because I don't understand them. And I understand that I've been in arguments before where people talk, well, we'll talk shit about political stuff or religious stuff. Oh yeah, I'll definitely do that. Those are things I'm inherently involved with and I am active within. And in a lot of these circumstances, when somebody takes something that Mr. Rogers said out of context, I get really pissed off. And the reason for that is because everyone suddenly forgets, as my comment showed, this is a man who at the height of segregation, civil rights, there was a cast member who portrayed a black officer on the show. And he was invited by Mr. Rogers to sit down and cool his feet off in a small little pool that was right outside of Mr. Rogers' porch. The reason for that was there had been an incident, I think just a few months earlier, where a white man, upset that there were black people in the pool, puts bleach in the pool while these poor people are still in the pool. That is within my own time, my own memory of things. That right there says so much about how we will take something and re-quantify it and realign it to what our belief systems are. I spoke in either the last video or the one prior about the Dunning-Kruger effect, about the whole concept that once we've learned something and we negate neuroplasticity by getting older, by becoming more entrenched in our ideologies and what we truly believe, that we are quick to remodify a lot of things from our memories or anything positive today that will help us out in, just entrenching where we are and moving forward with that. Whether it's through ignorance and unwillingness to want to open our minds up or whatever. It's the same thing that lent my credence to this. And this is, I told myself I'd never put this motherfucker's name in there because I personally, I truly detest the individual, the man that is Donald Trump. Now, this is not going to become political discourse. What this is going to say is this. Do I believe that anyone that voted for him is inherently evil or terrible? No, I don't. Because I can separate this. People are allowed to have their viewpoints. They're allowed to do a lot of things like that. What they are not able to do is be immune to the repercussive actions by their statements, their actions, or their implications. There are some people I know that voted for one president or another or whatever, and they've always been the most kind and genuine person I could ever know. There are other people, same situation, they've always been an asshole. Now, I understand that that is a gross oversimplification of what is happening. And I understand that. I truly do, because if this video had even fucking watched, this is the one that goes viral. If this video had any wider grasp, there would be no doubt comments inundated below with people going, "You're so wrong." The keyboard warriors would come out. Everything would go to shit. Both left and right would attack. It would be fucking insane. But for what it's worth, getting back to Mr. Rogers, I really believe that if he was alive today and still doing his show, that message would have changed, and he would have understand, and he probably would have said something along the line of, we all grow. We all learn new things. That's what we do in life. Sometimes there are circumstances where new information comes forward and we learn. Remember when you were a kid and you would learn things? Maybe you're a kid now and you're still learning things. Maybe you don't understand what's happening, and that's okay. We have all our time in life to figure out what things mean for us, for others, and all in between. That's the message that he would put out there. See, I very much believe that maybe I don't understand everybody or everything. I do understand that we are, for the most part, I would really love to believe this, and I do. The grand majority of us just want to live our lives and be happy in whatever context and capacity we can be. But it should never be to the alienation or downplay somebody else either. The flip side of that coin is definitely something else, though, too. I understand that every single day, I am very lucky for much of what I have in my life. I don't question that. I am not a rich man. I am not financially really secure. I am an artist living in a day and age where computer software may overtake my entire career and put me out of a job within the next 5 years. I am somebody who every facet of my creativity could be completely undercut by what modern technology is bringing me. And I am not a Luddite. I absolutely embrace a lot of technology. I love my computer. I love computers. I love my video games. I love all kinds of things. I am usually the first person to be an early adopter in most circumstances, whether it be art supplies, technology, music styles, you name it. I like things like that. At the exact same time, I have a painfully addictive love of retro aesthetics and what information and technology we've left behind in lieu of cheaper, faster, better examples. So I consistently try and remind myself to keep my mind open and to think about what the implications of living today are. Life is changing, and the biggest thing I've seen is that people truly do fear change or anything they don't know. Is it any wonder why a good majority of people today really do suffer some form of arrested development and fear things like death, like mortality, aging, anything like that? It's obvious. I'm certainly in that zone. And whenever I think about where I am in life, there are so many worse scenarios that I could be in. And this isn't downplaying on anyone else. I just know that I have worked jobs where I've thought, this isn't where I'm supposed to be, or this isn't it, or man, you are not living up to your potential. And I've had to kick myself and get going again and try and move forward and do stuff so that that way I don't feel like I'm wasting the time and the potential that I have. I always remember I had a great uncle who fought in the Korean War, Uncle Manuel. And I only met him a few times before he passed away. The man was a living legend in my family. He was fucking crazy and wonderful. He was a good dad. He was a good person. He did a lot of good things. And he lived life to the fullest. He rode motorcycles until he was in his 80s. And he went through a bunch of tragedy in his life. He lost his wife when he was much younger. They'd only been married for a few years, but had quite a few kids. His son Joseph was in a horrible motorcycle accident, and he had to take care of him from the age of, I think, 36 onward until finally Joseph passed on from complications. But the thing is, I never remember one time him complaining about anything. This is a man that, the story he used to tell me, and he told my father when I first heard it, was when he was serving in the Korean War, and how he was part of a machine gun nest. So there's 3 guys, and the third guy is really there in the event one of the other 2 gets shot or injured and can't operate the gun. There were battery emplacements of these guns along this whole line, and they were holding, and there was a river, and my mind's lost on some of the details, but essentially when the Chinese were coming across that and they were attacking, he said it was the middle of the night, and he says it was horrifying. They fired and they fired and they shot, and he said you could see them falling. What horrified him at first was the front lines weren't carrying any weapons. They were there essentially to absorb the bullets. And wave after wave kept coming over the piles of the dead. And he said, we would fire until literally the barrel was overheating. People were running out of ammunition. And there's points of that story that he doesn't go into, but he said at some point you'd start to see other guys who hadn't even run out of ammunition or anything. These are kids, essentially, 18 to 21-year-old kids. They ran. See, that's the thing about American history and war history, is we'll often focus on a lot of the positives and these sort of things, but the ugly truth of warfare is fucked up. And I promise there's a reason to why I'm telling you this story. He talked about remembering where he grew up in Kansas and all of these things, and he thought, this ain't fucking it. And he ran, just like everybody else did. So I don't know where the fuck I ran to. He never used the word fuck. I'm going to tell you that. That man never cussed. He said, I don't know where the heck I ran to, but I ran. He said, my memory is dodgy after that. A few of them survived. God knows what happened to the people they captured. Now, he told my dad this story because he was drafted. And when he was in high school, which he didn't get to finish, because he had to leave because, if I remember right, his father died right around that time, so he had to take over and get a job and do all these other things. So he never finished high school. Well, when he was in high school, he had an aptitude for art. Evidently, he was a very skilled illustrator. The few bits of art that I ever saw that he had are now lost to history. I lament that they're gone. I had seen him when I was a kid. He had a very good style. And in a lot of ways, what I draw today is my very faded memory of what I remember him doing. And so some of my designs are based on that aspect, very clean line work. But he told my dad, I didn't find this out until some years later. I went outside to do something with my mom. And, if I remember this right now, my brother was just born. And so I went outside to do something with him and my mom. And I don't remember where my sister was, but I was outside for a while, and then they got ready to leave. And then some years later, he told me that Uncle Manuel said, so your boy's an artist? And my dad was like, yeah, I don't really know what the hell he wants to do with that. keep telling him he needs to go in the military, he needs to do this sort of thing. And understand, I did have an inclination to want to go in the military, but that's a whole nother story. And he said, you know, Raymond, to my dad, I wanted to be an artist too, and I didn't get that chance. I didn't get that shot. I could have gone to school. That my teacher said I was good enough to have been able to attend some of the schools in New York, which only fires up my imagination as to what the fuck I have never seen of his art. And he just asked my dad, give him a chance. Don't discourage him, because I didn't get a chance to do it. So every single time I feel like shit is overwhelming or things aren't working out, I have to remind myself to ignore the naysayers and the people that don't believe in what I'm doing or maybe don't understand. I have to stop putting credence in my mind and credibility to these little voices in my head that go, this sucks, or this isn't going to work, or this isn't, there's no point to this. And march past that, work beyond that, and remind myself why the hell I'm here and why I'm doing what I'm doing. It's because I wanted to do it, but because my great uncle talked to my dad and helped convince him in some small part that this was worth it. It's a little disparaging to think that my father had to be convinced by his uncle, but I'm not going to look a gift horse in the mouth. And although it's not ideal, I do think to myself that there's so many other people I know. A good friend of mine actually told me one time that she very much wanted to be a graphic designer and just never had the opportunity to do that. I don't remember all the details, and it's really her story to tell, but she pushes her own kids forward and also provides opportunities for artists, old and young alike, to be able to display and have moments with art, and that's amazing. If we think about, going back to the comment earlier about people and misidentifying genders or any number of other modern day issues that have popped up, at its most basic aspect, it really should be about understanding. It doesn't mean I have to agree. It doesn't mean I have to fully comprehend. But I do think that we are all capable of understanding what other people go through. There have been a lot of times, and this is one of the reasons why even wanting to go live on Twitch has been something of an apprehensive move for me. I am not always a fan of the sometimes eclectic and erratic interactions that can happen online. I do know that there are people that hold way more laid back streams and have good, progressively analytical conversations with the people that comment. And I hope that when I finally make that jump into that, as it grows, if it grows, if I even get people that watch, that I'll be able to hold something akin to that. Nonetheless, so that's where I was with that. Aside from that, I'm going to go ahead and finish this entry. I know there was one or two other things I was thinking about, and I had some notes, and I don't know for the life of me where they went, but that's okay. That's fine. For what it's worth, for those of, once again, and I know I always talk about the people that reached out to me and stuff like that, but I want to say I am very grateful for all of you that do watch these videos all the way to the end or whatever, that sort of thing. Some of you that have commented on the little bloopers that I sometimes include. There isn't going to be one at the end of this one, but in other videos and all that other stuff. And a couple questions I've been asked. Yes, I own 3 cats, and I own 2 dogs. And they're they're hilarious. I've owned a lot of animals over my life. This is the first time to, and I'll throw this in, when I had my first 3 previous dogs, and there was another dog in between, but the point is, my very first 3 dogs that I had after I got out on my own, and just was away from my parents and that whole sort of thing, that was a challenge. And I'm glad I had help. I'm glad I had, a lot involved with that. But at the same time, I realized, like, because I was so interred in my own career and I never really made the time that I needed to do these things. I didn't understand what personal time meant. I didn't understand what it was like to give back to little beings that really just wanted my own time. And that was what was really necessary. And some of that outgrew because I have old family videos and photos and things, and I realized just how absent I was in a lot of those circumstances. And I don't ever want to make those mistakes again. Unfortunately, with age is the only time we normally get wisdom. It's rarely poured upon us when we're younger and appreciated as much. And I have to remember that. I've seen that firsthand with students of mine. I've seen that with peers and friends of mine, even at, this age now. So, anyway, yeah, so crazy. All right, I'm going to end this video so I can get to freaking work and get this video uploaded. Thanks again for watching, guys. I sincerely appreciate it. I'll catch you in the next video.